Okay, what I'm trying to say is that Harriet thought she was doing something good for everybody by going against the system, but it turns out that she pretty much only wanted it for herself, because if she truly cared about other people, she wouldn't have been so exasperated about Janie's newfound desire to learn how to dance. Even though they both wanted the same thing at first, Harriet wasn't prepared for Janie to change her mind, which just goes to show that Harriet was more interested in Janie helping her get out of dancing school rather than the two of them helping each other do what they wanted to do. That's when Harriet had to learn that if Janie wanted to do something different than what she wanted, then it's important to respect that. And that's a good lesson for all of us. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Harriet didn't like Mr. Dubois forcing her to dance perfectly, and Janie didn't like Harriet forcing her to join the rebellion. Which is interesting because Harriet assumed that she was doing Janie a favor by convincing her to escape the annoying teacher, not realizing that, in a way, Harriet was behaving just like the annoying teacher in the process. So that was a tough lesson for Harriet to learn, and that whole situation was very well written. I enjoyed that a lot. I especially love that final line at the end where Harriet said, "Part of being a best friend means knowing when to lead and knowing when to follow." They could not have picked a better way to conclude that episode. That was absolutely 10 out of 10. Perfect! Because when it all comes down to it, it doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl or a man or a woman, it's important to know when to lead and when to follow, because there's a time and a place for both, and figuring out exactly when and where is an essential part of growing up. I was just thinking, feminism plays a major role in this episode, and the story takes place right around the beginning of the women's rights movement, and we've certainly come a long way since then. Our society has gradually become more willing to accept the idea that girls can be leaders. We've seen women become doctors, lawyers, astronauts, Olympic athletes, scientists, engineers, and do all kinds of things that no one thought possible 60 years ago. And I support that 100%. But does that mean that all women should be leaders? Not necessarily. Some women make excellent leaders, and that's a good thing. But there are others who prefer to be stay-at-home moms and let their husbands go to work. Some feminists might tell you that that kind of lifestyle is old-fashioned or uncool. But if a woman wants to stay home and raise her kids, and maybe even homeschool them, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And that's exactly what Harriet learned today. Ballroom dancing wasn't her thing, but Harriet had to accept that Janie was choosing to learn to dance the traditional way, and that's okay. See, some liberals will say that all women should lead, and some conservatives will say that all women should submit or follow. I personally think there needs to be a balance between the two. All of us, male and female, need to learn when it is appropriate to lead or follow. And that's just like what Harriet was telling us as the show ended. As for me personally, I'm a grown man, but I usually see myself as more of a follower than a leader. Growing up as an autistic-only child, I've had very little experience in the field of telling other people what to do. But if a person I trust tells me to do something, I'll do it. Or at least try to. So I personally don't mind being told what to do, which is why I find Harriet's theme song somewhat annoying. But yeah, growing up, I was never the biggest or most masculine boy in my class, and I had no interest whatsoever in playing rough or getting dirty. I preferred reading, writing, drawing, studying maps, watching TV, and exploring malls and grocery stores. So on top of having autism, the whole issue of gender stereotypes was something that I struggled with a lot as a kid, and the whole cultural attitude saying that boys are naughty and girls are nice made things even harder for me. That's why I rarely had any friends. But as I've gotten older, what I've come to realize is when people say that all boys are this way and all girls are that way, that's a lie. Or at the very least, it's a false assumption. It's not true at all. We're all different in our own way, and it has nothing to do with our gender or age or anything else. It's all about who we are as individuals. And I think that's the main reason why I've always had kind of a soft spot for strong female characters in kids' media. As a kid, I was a huge fan of Peppermint Patty, as I said earlier. I've also enjoyed characters like Pippi Longstocking, Judy Moody, Amelia McBride from Amelia Rules, and Pepper Ann to name a few. And now Harriet. I can totally relate to how these characters want to be different from other girls, just as I'm a little bit different from other guys. I enjoy reading books about girls, and I work in a department store where the majority of the customers happen to be women, but that doesn't make me any less of a man. And even if Harriet prefers action and adventure over elegance and perfection, that doesn't make her less of a girl either. People might not understand that yet in '64, But Harriet is way ahead of her time, and her stories in the book by Louise Fitzhugh helped pave the way for many of the changes we've seen in our society over the last half-century. So yeah, Cross My Heart and Hope Not to Dance is a fantastic episode of Harriet the Spy. Episode 1, okay. Episode 2, better. Episode 3, I'm hooked. If I wasn't in love with this show already, this episode just knocked my socks off. That scene in the middle with Harriet trying to take a stand by dancing freestyle was epic. But more importantly, the thing that makes this show so wonderful is its abundance of multi-generational appeal. I think it would be a perfect choice for children and parents to watch together as a family, because it opens up so many opportunities for meaningful discussions. Families can talk about knowing when to lead and when to follow. How can we help our kids learn to accept situations that require discipline, obedience, and cooperation? And when would it be a good time to allow kids to freely express themselves and have fun? Because there needs to be a healthy balance between the two. Should boys and girls be required to do things a certain way based on their gender? Or should we be more flexible about that? If so, when and how? The answers to these questions are different for everybody. And rather than talking viewers into choosing one idea over another, Apple TV's Harriet the Spy leaves things open for families to sort out amongst themselves. It does a spectacular job at showing kids some of the realities of how things used to be when their parents and grandparents were growing up, while showcasing both sides of the spectrum. Some people are glad things have changed since then, while others may be nostalgic for a time when things were done more traditionally. Regardless of whether you're on Harriet's side, or her parents' side, or Janie's side, or even Mr. Dubois' side, this show allows you to see many different perspectives on the same issues. So instead of trying to stick a certain type of propaganda in your face, it allows us, the viewers, to think for ourselves so that we can decide what the real value is behind the story. And that is incredible.